Well, hey, Jim. How are you? John? Nice to meet you. Right?
I don't want to argue with Patty on the phone, but she said, I remember punching those two invoices.
Maybe it's, yeah, maybe it's, you want me to give me part of them and I'll.
No, I can do it right away. You guys have already been through one.
So I wasn't gonna take it.
That's fine. That's fine.
If they were in where mixed up, they would be close to the back.
It seems like it. I know, so he didn't say, you know.
Lift a couple of chairs over there.
I know what they look like, so.
Church towns.
Chief.
Just go in. I don't want to rush down, but that's an hour. Will on every
I'm just wondering, she said that he called Fred, Emily said he just had a car like a bunch of something. But I'm sure that's what we have. When they see what they can cite, they start to go.
Have to do that?
I'll call them where, right here, it doesn't matter. I'll be able to do this to my girlfriend Sunday night, and like, hey, maybe they don't need to back out of York. There won't be that, but I'll see. Yeah, that's a good call. I'll just cancel. Date night. I would need to go in there. Different weather.
Yeah, it's
It's
just.
gonna get cold.
Oh, we had a good weekend.
Oh, yeah.
No argument. Yep.
You get that
Oh, not crazy.
Polish food on the weekend. Nice weather, we girl, let's go. I heard it. Legs on the way back. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Which is one thing, but every other week is not. Of course, Sunday was so nice. I was still, not that I ever tried to recover from Friday night.
So what do we do?
I was calling you about strawberry fruit comfortable with that. I mean, we're here.
If it was a $5,000.
We got a call, pulled in right ahead of the truck. I saved all their personals. All their business. Saved all that.
Never got. Just in the kitchen.
Any idea what talking?
Pretty good idea, but we'll never know for sure. They have charging.
With all the charging.
That was laying around that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Must have been high current.
From those Ryobi's. Joking he had on the wall. Right there.
Not good.
I don't remember that.
No, I
I
have.
got a big, it's like 20 like my shots.
These are like.
Yeah, I am, yeah. But they're not lithium. But they're not like, you know, lithium batteries. So that's why they don't like it.
Don't want to be in the front row. Oh, yeah, you know, that wasn't over here, you want to. And I also, I don't want that.
Do the same thing.
No, I might, no,
Put your money back. Yeah. I always don't remember. Thank you. Take it.
Yeah. I forgot like. It has a bunch of pages.
Yeah.
That's what John. That's what John. Everybody started running that line.
Outside?
First one scared me, the next one, like, yeah, I don't think.
I know.
It does get your attention. Yeah, that's the top. Amazing, 30 seconds. Get back. That seems like yeah. Squeals, scream, big hair. But when I back it up, that's right. It's got a pallet.
So you can bring the trailer down to the house again, so we get some stuff. That's the only way it moves. And then take the whole thing back up.
Yeah, go get it.
Instead of that, it's take the trailer apart.
What are you telling us?
I guess I'm asking.
Probably should pull it out.
We've got one. I think we probably should make it.
And then. And then we'll just approve them.
Sounds like me. My head's
That's tricky word for it.
Careful, John. Be careful doing that. Trust but verify, right? You can take it.
All right, everybody, it's a little after 7. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We could all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John Cox. Here. Nancy Rondell.
Here.
John Leo.
Here.
Al Deka.
Here.
And Matt Rivera.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
What? Time for citizens' comment. If you have anything that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. And got a big crowd tonight, so if we could limit your talk to 3 minutes, it'd be appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, with your permission, may I address the council?
Okay.
Wonderful.
Give us your name and
Absolutely. Ryan Charles, attorney. I'm here on behalf of John Demmer, Ed Demmer, Laura Demmer, and Harbor Springs Retreat, which is the LLC, which owns the Demmer's home at 420 East Main Street. My understanding is that the city council will be discussing the proposal that I submitted to the city on behalf of the Demmers back in August regarding an alleged encroachment of their driveway and parking area into Shea Park. And I'd just like to offer some perspective on behalf of the Demmers tonight. So his background in 1998, Ed's father, John Demmer, resurfaced his driveway and parking area that runs from Bay Street to the residence with brick pavers as they currently exist today if you were to drive by the residence. And it's our understanding that the brick improvements basically followed the footprint of the prior asphalt driveway that was already in place. And it's our understanding that prior to undertaking these improvements, Mr. Demmer had approached the city about his plan and was told there was no issue with the project. And he basically proceeded based on that discussion. And I'm aware that this dialogue was previously referred to as a handshake deal. That was probably not a very good description, because our understanding is not that the city knowingly permitted Mr. Demmer to encroach into Shea Park, or that Mr. Demmer had requested permission to do so, just that everyone understood and believed the improvements were within his property's footprint. There was no recognized issue with the project, and he was given the green light to proceed based on those understandings. So fast forward to 2020, Ed Demmer approached the city and zoning administrator about pursuing a possible building project at 420 East Main. As part of the zoning administrator's feedback, it was brought to the Demmers' attention that a portion of their driveway and parking area was allegedly encroaching into Shea Park and needed to be eradicated in order to receive zoning approval for any building project. At that point, we undertook legal and historical research and determined that in our assessment, the Demmers had already acquired legal title vis-a-vis the legal doctrine of acquiescence to a boundary because they had met the statutory 15-year period as of 2013. And notably, the law changed in 2016, which prevented such claims against municipalities such as cities like the city of Harbor Springs. So notwithstanding the Demmers' belief that legal title to this area vested in their favor as of 2013, the Demmers are not looking for a windfall or to get something for free. They commissioned an appraisal for this 1,600 square foot area of land, and it presented the city with a proposal to pay the city this fair market value to resolve their claim to this area. And we believe this is a fair offer, it's practical, It maintains the status quo as it existed for over 20 years, and it resolves the issue going forward. We're hopeful the city will give our proposal serious consideration. I'm happy to address any specific questions any of the council members may have about the proposal. And I also have several visual overlays with me tonight that depicts the area that's subject to the proposal. If it's helpful for any of you to view those, I'm happy to share those.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Tom Sheldon. I live at 258 4th Street, and I want to talk about the church bells. It came to my attention with my neighbors in a conversation that the frequency, volume, and duration has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. Historically, the bells rang at 6, noon, and 6. And by definition, the Angelus bells are 9 strikes, 9 tolls, 3 sets of 3. That has changed over the last several years. At 6 a.m., they ring 32 times, sometimes 34 times. At noon, they ring sometimes 32 times or 34 times. And at 6 p.m., they ring 32 to 34 times. Additionally, over the summer, the frequency changed to every hour on the hour. Now, there's a document in the packet that was submitted by the church to describe both the rings and the music that follows the rings. And I just want to make some corrections. At 6 a.m., they say the Angelus bells ring 4 times. Chief Knight validated they ring 32 to 34 times. Bells at 7 a.m., they said ring 7 times. They actually ring 16 times plus 7. So there is a 16 bell warm up before the 7 strikes. I can go on, but every hour on the hour, it's a 16 bell warm up in addition to the hour strikes. At noon, again, Angelus bells, 32 strikes to 34 strikes, and at 6 p.m. What's changed also is we didn't have those hourly bells, and we didn't have the bells going on until 11 p.m. So if you think about it, the bells are ringing 18 hours a day in our neighborhood. Now, some people that don't live downtown, it doesn't really affect, but people that live on 3rd Street, 4th Street, right in that community, it really has an impact. So in a sense, the church is ringing bells from 11, or only stopping ringing bells from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. I want to make some corrections on, or amplifications on Chief Knight's report. And I appreciate both Victor and Chief Knight listening to my concerns, my neighbors' concerns, and handling it with professionalism and courtesy. It states that the bells do not have purpose. That's different from the bells not having meaning. The bells have very strong and profound and important meaning. I'm just saying in today's 21st century, I don't need the bells to tell me what time it is. I don't need the bells to wake me up. I don't need the bells to tell me to go to sleep. It's noted that the bells have rung for years. Again, I've already mentioned that we're concerned about the frequency, the duration, and also the volume. Chief Knight measured the volume of over 90 dB. 90 dB has an impact to hearing. The typical person cannot sleep over 45 or 50 dB. If we add up the strikes over the summer, the bells rang 441 times a day. Chief Knight suggested that the father said we can adjust the volume. I'm all for that. I think that's great. We can also make a compromise. I'm all for that. I think that's great. Chief Knight suggested, what if we play the music between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m.? I said, that's not acceptable, because what that means is we go from 18 hours of bells and music to 12 hours of bells and music. And that means the bells now ring only 309 times. And we have music only 12 times a day. The city has excluded the church bells historically as an exception to the noise code. And what's interesting to myself and my neighbors is all the other items are city sanctioned: fireworks, band, aloft parades, emergency vehicles, snow plowing equipment, snow plowing vehicles and equipment, school bells. I'm suggesting that the church should follow the same ordinance that all my neighbors have to follow downtown, and should follow the same ordinance that any business downtown follows. And that is,
I can't mow lawn before 8 a.m. I can't mow my lawn after 6 p.m. on Sunday. I can't play my music over 70 dB. I have included some additional forms here that are clear.
So you are clear on that in time, we can wrap it up.
Okay, clear for dB levels. The print was pretty poor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else
I'd
tonight?
like to talk a little bit.
Gardner?
My name is Jeff Gardner. I live at 244 West Third Street. I've been up here 65 years. As a little boy, I loved to hear the bells go off at noon and the siren going off. And I always remember being young and watch all that. So do you even know why the bells go off? Does anybody know why the bells go off? Mrs. Buell informed me years ago before she died, lovely lady. She said that angels of the Lord. So it rang 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. I thought that was great, no problem. And then bottom line is the coming of the Christ. So it's tradition. Now it's getting a little out of control here. I just like a few bells, which is great. But if you're going to have 36 times and you have songs after the bell, it goes on till 11 at night. And sometimes I stay up past 11. But a lot of times I like to sleep a little, or go to bed a little bit earlier. But I'm just saying moderation. That's the bottom line. Moderation. Why do you have to have the bell start at 6 a.m.? Okay, that's fine. As Mrs. Buell said, Jeff, why don't you just make a prayer and go back to bed? So I took her and I said, that's fine. I'll do a prayer and go back to bed. Then it goes off at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is ridiculous. But anyway, I'm just saying what I have to say. So moderation is what I'm asking for. It's gone off way too long. And I knew Father Joe, he's great. And he kept moderate. He was moderate. Okay, end of story. Thank you.
Public comment?
My name is Father James Beers. I am here also with Reverend Deacon Fred Hackle, and representing good people of Holy Childhood of Jesus. And much has already been said about the bells, but I would also address as well. And the Angelus is a very ancient prayer going back centuries. What we have currently goes back to the 15th century and even further beyond that as well. And how bells have been used, I think we've been hearing that already addressed. And the Angelus address is at 6 a.m., noon, and at 6 p.m., as already been stated. And they deal with the whole incarnation and a devotion to Mary, so that the angel Gabriel and Mary, and it is a devotion that Catholics have been celebrating, as I said, for centuries. The towing of the hours is something that has gone on as well. As I look up in the bell tower for the system up there, at least it got revamped in 1970 with the towing of the hours and the chimes that go on afterward, after each towing of the hours. It's something that's been going on here for decades, as I've inquired from the various parishioners in their own childhood, and as one has already stated from his own time here some 60-some years ago. So it's been part of the, I guess you might say, Harbor Springs experience, the towing of the bells. And what they have offered to Catholics, not only here, hopefully other Christians as well, and not, but around the country and around the world as well. I think that the bells offer a sense of who we are, especially as speaking as a Catholic, and what they continue to remind us of the monks and the nuns that would live their life by the bells. And we continue to ring the bells before the Mass, or some you might call it a service, that tolls the bells before, and as they do the Angelus and each hour. So that's my spiel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Fred Hackle. My address is 5132 7 Mile Point Ridge Drive. I've lived here over 20 years. I serve as the deacon at the Holy Childhood of Jesus Catholic Church. And I feel persecuted with regard to the charge that the Parisian bells violate the noise ordinance The Carillion bells have no resemblance to, and I quote the complaint, Disneyland-style entertainment or an ice cream truck playing show tunes. They play hymns. It is a holy thing. With regard to the charge that the church bells violate the disorderly conduct ordinance, the bells do not, and I quote the ordinance, disturb the public peace and quiet by loud, boisterous, or vulgar conduct, or by making loud sounds. They ring as church bells should. The noise ordinance should not contain any absolute prohibitions on certain types of sound. We have the live music at the farmers market, the Chamber of Commerce's street music, marching bands, parades, fireworks, the noon siren, emergency vehicle sirens, trucks, motorcycles, and yes, church bells. The fact that a sound is from an actual church bell or an electronic Carillion bell makes no difference. I take personal exception with the following statement, and I quote an exchange documented in the police report by Chief Kyle Knight. Sheldon also told me that these bells do not serve any purpose, as when we reviewed the exceptions to the noise ordinance, all of the exceptions served a purpose, but not the bells. One purpose is that I personally require ringing of the church bells to aid me and our parishioners in the call to worship. Respectfully.
Anybody else this evening? Once, twice, 3 times.
So, does council want me to further look into this church bell issue, or? We're not gonna discuss right now, but maybe think about it.
We'll think about it over the meeting and talk about it under new and old business, I guess.
All right. We're moving on to the consent agenda. Mayor, we do have some student members here, so I don't know if we want to do that appointment first.
Sure, we can do that.
That's fine.
All right.
We had 4 student members, well, we had 17 students applied for our 4 board positions on the DDA, tree board, planning commission, and the Marina Park Committee. And that was great. We had 17 applicants. It was awesome. It was hard though to choose 4. So I met with staff and the chairs of each of those boards, and we narrowed it down to 1 for each board. And the list of students you have, Mayor, and as council, you have that list as well. I sent an email of the 4 that we're recommending to serve on the boards. They're all juniors at Harbor Springs High School.
For 2 years.
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
This is 1 year, and then they can decide to apply again for the same board next year or a different board if they want.
Very good. Well, we've got Max Bassett, who's going to be our new on the planning commission. Stand up, say hello to everybody. Welcome to the planning commission. We've got a lot of work to do. Josie Baker's here. She's going to be on the Marina Park Committee. Savannah Mackey. She's not here, but she's going to be on the tree advisory board, head tree hugger. And Ella Ruddy is going to be on the DDA.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Very
We
exciting.
appreciate you doing this. Give us a lot of good input. We're trying to build the town. All right, I guess we've got our consent agenda now.
We do need to pull the bills out because we have a missing bill.
Yeah,
We need to-
there's a couple bills that got filed away in a myriad of paper on somebody's desk, so I have to get those to Nancy first thing in the morning, and we'll approve the whole batch at next meeting. If that's acceptable.
You guys all happy with that?
As long as the city doesn't stop doing what it does, I'm okay with that.
This is what minutes, Salvation Army request, and the MPPA power is part of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve. Second that.
Any comments?
Any public comment before we get ahead of ourselves?
Um,
It's on the consent agenda. Excellent. Got a first and second.
Yeah, and I'll do a roll call. Al Dyke.
Yes.
John Cobbs. Yep. John Leo.
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
Matt Bogier.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Spring Street.
Yes, onto discussion items. So this came to our attention about, I would say, month and a half ago. We received an email from Ashley O'Reilly, and I'm sure you've read this memo, so I won't talk too much. I'll let Kathy, I may speak first. But essentially, long story short, she erected some cedar hedges or some trees that are in a hedge formation on the city right away. And the city code does not permit the city manager to approve hedges in the right of way. So under no circumstance, so I had to deny it. And so she's appealing that denial to city council, which is granted in the city charter, the city code allows her to appeal this to council. Because it's a city right of way, it's not a zoning issue. I do understand that there have been some boundary line, property line issues between the two neighbors, so they've been, I guess, paying attention to the property line and what's happening there. So Jeff is here later on, Jeff Grimm, if you have some questions about the history of that, because it kind of plays in indirectly to this, but I'll let them speak first and then I'll just give my summary afterwards. I'm sure you've read my memo, but my thoughts, and then council can deliberate on how to roll on that one.
My name is Kathy Emick. I live for 25 years at 509 North Spring Street. There's always property line disputes up there. My new neighbor had a survey that was contrary to the one I had Bishop do way back in '96. So we've had a property line issue. The line of trees that were installed, and thank you for that. You had a, maybe you could bring that up just a little bit higher. Can you do that?
Is this one?
Yep, it's that's, you can use either one of those. Where the green is at the bottom, there's a big oak tree by one of them. In fact, I think you can see it there. There's a street post to the very left. That's a kind of a driveway, and then you go to the right, and that's been a lawn area and a flower bed area. And that area has always had flowers, a little rock wall, and which was boxwoods. And the trees kept getting trimmed to the point of obscurity. So I asked Dave Hoffman to go ahead and put a line of trees in, which are called Niagara arborvitae, to create a privacy screen and give it a better look, basically. And so he did that, and nothing was changed as far as the footprint goes. And there's one of the pictures. Then I talked to Jeff Grimm a while back before I put these in, and I asked about vegetation restrictions. He said, well, there aren't any, but he didn't tell me about the little known rule about this right away. So then he came over and, let me know that this was disputed. And so he said, and I asked him, where's the right of way then? How do I know where the right of way is? The sidewalk's always been there, and the flower box has always been there. And he said, well, often it'll go according to the street and the sidewalks, but this row of streets doesn't have sidewalks. So I took a picture from Kathy Boyer's house, and it shows the delineation of where I park and where the trees are planted, and it's in line with the sidewalk from across Spring Street or Summit Street. So my goal here is to maintain the trees as Dave Hoffman installed them. He actually moved them back a little bit to make sure that they were out of the line of sight or whatever, but he did it according to what he thought was according to the city. And they are definitely way towards my end of the property and nowhere near Ashley's. So my goal for this meeting is to maintain the trees as they're planted. If there's any other questions about it, that's basically it. There's a tree line planted And what it was, you just had it there, what it was pretty sparse, and the cedars kept getting sparser and sparser for some reason. So I had to pull those out and then put in something that actually allowed some privacy. Any questions?
Kathy, how many of those trees are actually in the right of way of
Well,
those?
Jeff couldn't tell me, or he couldn't tell me that. So I have no idea, according to what Dave said, because we had Dave Hoffman, because we of course had that conversation, and he does this all over town. He thought that we were in good shape with this. And then I went all over town, and there is so many infractions on what you consider the city right of way. You know, there's brand new rock walls right on the road, you know, down Pine Street. And, you know, and this is just one because I had a complaint from a neighbor. Otherwise, she probably never would have addressed it. So, but according to Dave Hoffman, that was within the normal areas. And
We should be able to determine where the right of way is, it
We
seems like.
can, we have determined where the right of way is.
So, I mean, is it 2 of those trees
It's
that are?
essentially from this, almost from this orange stick right here, yeah, that's, the right of way is pretty, I mean, there is a survey provided here that shows the lines. And really, most of, it goes up to almost where the street is paved about right here. So it's, as you see the property line of the houses come almost up to the front, I should say, of the house comes almost up to right away, so.
yeah, which means if you use that as the right of way, that means any of my neighbors, anybody can park on any of their lawns because that's city property. You know, if you look at Shepler's and you look at the Burnses and all that, they're all on city right of way with their rock walls and their trees and things. So I did look up, I was told that you can plant trees. The Arbor Society says that in their tree guide, the trees that were planted are trees, they're not shrubs. So again, I'm here to hope that you can maintain the hedges or trees as planted. But that's a rough street, you know, there's so many infractions on that street and many of them. So you're gonna change them all, or you're just gonna change Spring Street? Because it'll have to go all the way down to the school or to where the sidewalk is. It'll affect 5 or 6 houses.
We've had trouble with these skewed surveys in the past. And we were having a lot of problems on State Street 20, 30 years ago. When people were selling houses, expanding. And I don't remember exactly who paid for it or how we did it, but we went in, I think Jim was part of the negotiations. And we negotiated with the all the lot owners and came up with a compromise plan that they could all accept. And we straightened out the plat up there. And it took care of a lot of these problems. Like this, not exactly like this. We didn't have fences running into the right of way. But yeah, there will be many more problems as long as those lots remain skewed like they are. And it seems to me that plat should be corrected. And with respect to your personal thing here, I was walking around your place today, and it looked to me like the fence is not, or the hedge is not intrusive to your neighbor. Perhaps the last 2 trees closest to the road should be removed to get a better sight line coming out of their driveway. But it seemed to me like that would be a practical solution to it, unless there's something really bad about the trees and the rock wall.
That's just fine, so I've done enough work around the city, I can't believe the city right away is that far back,
Right.
you know?
It is very skewed on Spring, there's hardly anything on the east side of Spring
I
Street.
mean, I can see the right of way being on the other side of her cars, but
They've got the same thing on Bay Street in front of the white condos.
Yep.
The right of way goes almost up to the doors, garage doors of the white condos.
Yeah.
So that street is not in the middle of the right of way. And it's, has caused similar problems in the past.
If you looked at the survey Bidstrip did in 96, the back corner of the lot is underneath the sidewalk. And that lot is totally at an angle, which if we use their, in fact, you can see it right there, you can see the line, how askew that property line is. You see where the house is, and then you see where the sidewalk is at the top. And then you look at that odd angle, how the actual original lot line went. So that's where Bidstrip came up with in 96. Or so, it's a tough spot.
Well, this is not the survey itself, this is a hand drawn.
That's correct. That was done according to their stakes. Yeah. And they wouldn't come back out to do a survey, but I still have one done. But this is done according to the stakes they put in when I originally installed a fence in the backyard.
My concern, and they're lovely, I was up there too and looked at it because I need to see it.
Yeah.
And just to be, my concern was that if we let you plant into the right of way, we're gonna have trouble telling other people they can't do that, because there's a lot of places up in this town where the right of ways are very funny. I mean, I own property on Main Street and they're weird. The lots are weird, the right of ways. And it looks lovely. I guess a recommendation, I would say, and I know this isn't what you exactly want, but the trees, the like 3 of them, to take them back beyond the big oak that was already there, is that an oak that's already there?
It's an oak, yes.
Yeah. To have some kind of compromise maybe with you about it, because I can foresee we're gonna set a precedent, I'm afraid, that other people will say, well, my right of way is funny and I wanna shield myself from my neighbors too. And I can see it ending up being a problem with sight lines coming out of driveways, because again.
That's
the
far
way it
enough
is.
back. That's at least 12 feet back from the street edge, where that starts.
Just something.
And you can see it from the drawing. It's more than enough back.
It sounds like a number of us went over to take a look at the property, actually did that. And I actually pulled into the driveway
Did you?
and then backed out to see what the line of sight is. And my feeling is there's plenty of visibility. Not only that, but if you remove 1, 2, or 3 trees in front, you still got the oak tree. You're not really gaining that much. From a practical standpoint, to me, that was a reasonable expectation for 2 reasons. One is your front yard and a privacy fence makes perfect sense. The other one is, and I don't know the details of it, but if you came to the city and we weren't clear on exactly what the limitations on planting was, which is maybe a lesson learned in the future, we need to say, okay, great, show me where you want to put it on your property, and then we can ascertain where setbacks are and right of ways are. But from a practical standpoint, other than just enforcing the right of way, there's no practical reason to remove it.
Thank you.
And I mean, if you can go to planning commission meetings, you can go to ZBA meetings. This city is rife with exceptions. We don't meet setbacks because of when the planning, the code was implemented and on and on and on, and surveys. Anyway, I don't feel as concerned as I think others are about setting a precedent. We got lots of precedents, and anyone who comes in with a situation like this should be heard. And unless there's a practical reason to tear out something that is in fact not obstructing anything and has improved both the property and the neighborhood, I don't see reason to take it out.
And you want to see if there's anyone, for neighbors in attendance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anyone from Spring Street or the surrounding area?
Yeah.
Just Ashley, but Betty, I mean, my neighbors were happy to put together a petition. Mr. Grimm said, don't do it, it's not worth it. But everybody loves the trees. So if you talk to everybody else in the neighborhood, I'd be happy to bring you a letter with their signatures. But everybody loves the trees.
I'm Ashley O'Reilly. I submitted a letter which I gave to Victor. I don't really have much more to add to the letter. For me, it's a safety issue. We're quite a way across the street from the high school, about 50 feet from the corner, Spring and Summit, and kids are in session now, and there's a lot of driving issues there. Me, yes, I can back out slowly, I can see around the corner, but 2 days ago, Friday last week, I witnessed 2 kids driving from Spring and on Summit, and they couldn't see each other, honked the horn, slammed on brakes. So for me, it was just a safety issue. We can't see around the trees, they're quite high, 7 feet tall, and that's really what I said in the letter that I submitted, so I don't really have anything more to add.
Yes, and hate making these decisions, but I mean, we have made people remove right away infractions before, and I think, you know, we play hardball once, we're gonna play hardball every time on this stuff. That's my opinion. I mean, 'cause they could come back on us.
My comments are based exclusively on the attributes of this particular claim and that tree that's already there. So if we have a concern about visibility, taking the front trees out isn't gonna help that, then are we saying take the tree down?
No, I agree.
Again, I agree with Al. I think if we just remove, if Kathy took the front two out, puts it in line with the oak tree's been there 100 years. And then
Is the oak tree allowed in the right of way?
That oak tree's been there, yeah.
So it was grandfathered.
It's grandfather.
And it's city, actually, it's a city tree.
That's a city tree.
That's a city tree because it's in the right of way.
Well, anything that goes in the right of way is a city. So like the city, anytime we need to do work there, we can go there and dig it up, and that's what it is. It's planting at your own risk.
Yeah, it's a good compromise. We're not gaining a whole lot.
I do have one concern, and that is that, from a practical standpoint, is that cars often park here. And so if you're, come driving, or if, let's say you're walking, you really can't walk on this side of the road, on this side of the.
there's no sidewalk there. You shouldn't be walking over there anyway.
Sidewalks on the
Well, you
other
can walk on the right, you can walk on the right of
Well,
way,
you
the
can-
city's.
You can
city's
walk
right
down
of
the
way.
road, but I mean, the sidewalk's on the other side of the street.
And
That's half
it's
the
allowed,
problem.
it's allowed to park on the right.
Right, but so now that just, with the hedge there and cars parking there, it just creates that more of an obstruction.
But if the cars are there, the hedges mean nothing because you can't see around the cars.
But you can walk, you'd be able to walk through there because it's right away. So these hedges, for example,
We're not gonna walk through a flower bed or something there.
Yeah, right.
but you can, it's the city's right
Yeah,
away.
I mean. Should
That's-
like that
I
all
think that's
over
what
the
this-
city. I mean,
well,
you're gonna have trespassing, all over the city. Oh, they won't walk through their flower bed because it's in the right of way.
But we have seen residents do this sometimes in cities right away, and I don't think this was Kathy's intention, but
It's
where,
been there since I bought the house.
where vegetation and things get put in the cities right away, which essentially prohibits the public or discourages the public from going on city property or city right away. So it essentially creates private space out of city right away. So that's just something I think we need to be careful about.
Absolutely.
But practically speaking, we did talk to the DPW director, Chief Knight. There was really not a safety concern per se about the hedges being there. There might have been a public convenience concern, but not really a safety concern. So from that aspect, we didn't really see a safety concern.
We gotta compromise on my end. I would say remove the front two hedges, go in line with the oak. It gains 4 feet of visibility right there for the neighbor backing out, pulling out. And you still gotta deal with cars that are parked there. School traffic's always been an issue in there. I mean, so it's an issue everywhere around the city from 7:30 in the morning till and after 8, and then 3 to 4, so. I'd vote for a compromise, remove the front two and leave it.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we ask Kathy to remove the front two hedges and leave it.
I'll second.
Hang on, bear with me, folks. Nancy Rondell,
Yes.
John Leo,
Yes.
Al Dyke,
Yes.
Matt Bagheera,
No.
And John Cox.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to item B, which is the Emmett Transit Authority presentation. I believe we have Nikki Devitt and Cassia Privilege here from the chamber and from the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation to do a 15-minute presentation on a proposed Emmett Transit Authority. Let me get to you guys. PowerPoint.
Not a problem. You're okay for me to tell you when to click?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Been clicking for a while.
Perfect. Thank you. As Victor said, I am Nikki Devitt of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce, and this is Cassia Perpich from the Petoskey Area Harbor Springs Community Foundation. And we are here to talk to you a little bit about a presentation that we wanted to do probably a month or so ago, but schedules did not necessarily align. So we're updating you on where the last 9 months of work have gone for public transit in Emmett County and where we hope it will continue to go. So if you want to click to the next slide. Under the two leaderships, we decided to convene about 9 months ago a 14-member work group. And you'll see some of the representation here. And the intent of that work group was to vet the idea of public transportation in Emmett County. And many people know that we've had many instances of attempts at public transportation, and we do have some established services that do provide transportation, but an overall public transportation model has not been seen in Emmett County in quite some time in a successful format. So we wanted to see, is that still something that is needed? And if it is, what's the best model and what does that look like? So being that neither the Chamber nor the Community Foundation are transit experts, we solicited a tremendous amount of feedback from area transit authorities, from the state, from MDOT, from groups who had previously looked at transit opportunities, as well as following some models within the state to see what really works. We have this full proposal that we worked on thrivingpetoskey.com under initiatives, and you can read it. It's very, very detailed. The appendices and everything make it many, many pages, but it kind of shows what we did over the course of the months. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the reason we came up with this concept and the reason we went through with a proposal, because the Chamber and the Community Foundation have taken a look at the very real issues that face our county, not just our individual cities of Petoskey and Harbor Springs, but the county as a whole. And it all ties back into what do we want to be in our future and what best facilitates that. So our housing issues, our workforce issues, our childcare issues, our transportation issues, all of these things have impact on the development and the future of our communities. So when we looked at this, we decided to see where we can be the most effective. For instance, the Chamber, we are a business advocacy organization. So while many people think, well, your job is business, your job is to protect my taxes, your job is to protect my regulations, our job is also anything that touches business, which includes transportation. And the Community Foundation sees things very much the same, so we figured we were the best to be unbiased and put some effort forward. So what we came up with and presented to Emmett County on June 24th was that the establishment of a transportation authority to manage a countywide public transit was our best researched perspective. In cooperation with that Emmett County Transit Authority, then you could authorize a public transit millage to help finance this countywide transit system. So if you go on to the next slide. So we did this, and what ended up happening, where we are now, so we can give you that kind of really cool news, is after many ideations, many conversations with the Board of Commissioners and a very long 2.5-hour meeting on transit alone, we were able to show a tremendous amount of support from area businesses, not just our work group, but also the City of Petoskey and others wrote support for coming up with a transit solution. At this point in time, at the last Emmett County Board of Commissioners meeting, the Board of Commissioners directed Administrator Mike Reeves to move forward with vetting not only a transit authority, once again, based on some of the work that we had done, but also other alternate opportunities. And in doing so, to come back to them with basically 3 choices to figure out what is going to be the best next steps for transit in Emmett County, recognizing that transit is a need, not a maybe, is a huge success. So our ask here is not necessarily what it would have been a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. Our ask more is now that if you feel passionate in one way or another, if you do your own research and you want to give feedback to the county and the county administrator, the Board of Commissioners, we highly suggest you do so. So let's explain a little bit quickly why we felt the need. And we felt the need because a lot of reasons listed here. We know that our opportunities for transit have never been more clear. As we start to move out of our city propers with expansion and needs for housing that will need to be met in the future, we know that makes transit all the more of a need. And we've seen consistent reports of support for public transit. We think that part of the county's vetting is going to be doing more surveys, as they have done in the past, to see what is the willingness for public services. We learned some fantastic lessons from MGO, and we used that to help us look forward and see that a transit authority really is the ideal structure for our county and our opinion. So if you want to slip to the next slide. So a little bit here, this is where our counterpart, Jessica Stobaker, who is a Leadership Little Traverse graduate, which is a program that is convened by the Harbor Springs Chamber and the Petoskey Chamber. And it was her kind of brainchild with her class right before COVID, that if we could put our minds behind something, it would be, what's the transit solution for our communities that serves all? And Jessica is also a member of our Thrive 45 Young Professionals group that serves Emmett County, as well as the co-chair of the Thriving Petoskey Committee for the Chamber. So she is a fantastic individual and young entrepreneur that we're very excited to have on our team, but she was unable to make it tonight. So she explains really well, so I'll fill in for her. So what is a transit authority and why did we feel this was the best? So it's part of a legislative act from 196, and more than half of all public transit services in other northern Michigan counties are authorities. We based a lot of that on that. And that is really one of the reasons we suggested this, because it's also not a new concept to Emmett County. Many cities, townships, and others participate in authorities that are organized: fire, airport, sewage, other services. Emmett County even has a land bank authority, as well as the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, created under very similar statutes. We can go to the next slide. So the other idea behind a transit authority and our proposal is that it focuses exclusively on public transit issues, meaning that it can work much more efficiently. You reduce the county's legal and financial liability as well, and the overall administrative burden, which in the perspective of where our administrative burdens are post-COVID are heavy and huge for many. So looking at what opportunities we have to do that. And it also provides a lot more flexibility, structure, staffing, oversight. Those things became very clear in the efforts of MGO, that we needed that flexibility. And we want to see what kind of people we can attract to our area as well. And making sure that nothing is reflected too much on any short-term political influences. Next slide. One of the things that we found most interesting when we were researching is that you can structure this transit authority in any way you want. In our articles of incorporation that were proposed, that were just basically, here's some suggestions that we created, we actually recommended that the Board of Commissioners appoint a majority of the members of the ETA to help retain that control and understanding of just who would be in charge of this authority. Funding and financing operations for an authority are also flexible in comparison to systems operated solely by government. And one of the things we found most important in our articles of incorporation that we suggested was that the Emmett County Board of Commissioners retain final approval of all millage requests. Nobody wants taxes. So what you have to do is make sure that you don't have a rogue entity going. And we gave a structure that made sure that you could have as much control as possible. And now I'm going to flip it over to Cassia to talk a little bit about some services we already have and kind of why we felt transit was so important.
Thank you, Nikki. Again, to reintroduce myself, I'm Cassia Perpich with the Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation, co-convened this transit work group with Nikki. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight and update you on the work we've been doing for the county. So, speaking of millage, in this slide, we show a number of countywide millages that have passed in the last 5-6 years or so. Our group, in interviewing various stakeholders, residents, business owners, anyone who had an interest in transit or in villages, we talked to them, and the feedback was resoundingly clear. This is something that people want to vote on. This is a major piece of infrastructure, and they feel that this should be on the ballot for them to decide once and for all if this is a critical countywide amenity they want to provide, and through millage taxation. And over the last several years, many countywide millages have been on ballots and have passed successfully, and these are highlighted here. And they really demonstrate that whether you use these millage-funded services or not, not all of us have school children or kids enrolled in college. Not all of us are senior citizens. Some are, some aren't. Some of us have the misfortune of riding in an ambulance, others not. But we all, generally, we care about our people, and we like to lift up everyone. And that's pretty evident in many of the countywide millages that have been passed in the last 5 years. And so we are hopeful for the opportunity at some point in the future. There's no defined time frame at this point, but at some point in the near to midterm future, that people will have an opportunity in a ballot to speak up about this with regards to public transit, and if this is something that they want to see in their county overall. We believe, based on the research and data we've collected, that the answer is yes, they do want this, but the millage is the ultimate survey, in our opinion. So, what did we learn from MGO? Because the county has been experimenting with transit over the last few years. And some of the lessons we gleaned in talking to different stakeholders, and even listening to the county's most recent conversation a week ago, last Monday night, was really fascinating. That I think a lot has been learned in the last few years, particularly with respect to MGO. Some insights, that it's essential to have a sustainable source of funding. And the absence of long-term political and financial commitment limited the degree to which businesses, organizations, and others were willing to buy bus passes for their clientele or ads, on the bus and what have you. Straits Regional Ride has limited capacity and staffing, technology, flexibility, resources, and on-the-ground presence in Emmett County. Our county currently contracts for very limited service with Straits Regional Ride right now. And Emmett County staff themselves have had limited capacity. And so the county commissioners are taking a really deep look right now. Our proposal, we feel, has been an opening to a much deeper dialogue amongst them and amongst our citizens. It's been really awesome to go through this process actually and see the awakening and deeper dive into this issue. Next slide, Dr. Fleesing. So I'm just going to speak for another 2-3 more minutes, and then we'll wrap up for any questions or comments. But just to bring it back home, just to remind everyone why public transit, why, does this matter in our county? So, true or false? Michigan is the most expensive state to own a car. True or false? It's true. It's true. So, one of the greatest benefits that public transit can provide is that it offers a safe and affordable alternative to car ownership, and it can really reduce the financial strain placed on lower income families. And so, as I mentioned, case in point, Michigan is the most expensive car to own a state, and according to recent research done earlier this year. So the average cost of US car ownership is about $5,200 a year, and yet the average cost of car ownership in Michigan is about $9,300, and in Emmett County specifically, it's about $10,700. And when I think about all the costs associated with the car ownership, really, I'm not surprised by this. When you consider loan payments, annual registration, insurance, fuel, maintenance, unexpected repairs, parking fees, Michigan winter, snow tires. Next slide, please, Victor. And so, maybe the sheer expense of car ownership is one reason why, according to the US Census Bureau, 1 in 16 households in Emmett County report not having a vehicle available for personal use. So we've got the table up there, and you can see some percentages by zip code, but Emmett County overall is about 6.3% of our population reports not having a vehicle available for personal use. That translates into about 1 in 16 households. Next slide, please. Recent research by the University of Michigan estimates that on average, Emmett County residents pay about 28% of their income toward transportation, which is huge. A general rule of thumb suggests that transportation should cost about no more than 15% of take-home pay. And, I myself actually knows what it feels like to be affected by transportation costs. Now, I live in Petoskey, but I think this could certainly apply to a Harbor Springs resident as well. So I'm originally from Northern Michigan. I was raised in Traverse City, but I lived elsewhere for a long time. And 5 years ago, I moved from Boston to Petoskey to be closer to my family. And when I made the decision to move, I assumed that the cost of living, it would be lower compared to Boston. And I also expected that when I was job searching, the salaries of the jobs would be lower here as well compared to the salaries in Boston, which they were when I was doing my job search. So imagine my surprise when, after living in Petoskey for a few months, having gotten my job at the Community Foundation, I'm tallying up all my bills, crunching the numbers here, and seeing that my cost of living, my household expenses were nearly the same in Petoskey as they were in Boston. And this was all while having significantly reduced my salary as well. And as I was crunching the numbers, trying to understand what did I not think about here? The key factor for me was transit. So on one hand, my rent in Petoskey at the time was a few $100s cheaper than my rent in Boston. And my space was bigger and a nicer, cleaner community, so quality of life enhanced for sure. Rent was cheaper. But on the other hand, when I lived in Boston, I had minimal transportation costs. I walked most places. I didn't own a car at all. And if I had to travel a farther distance, I would just occasionally take the subway, the T, go over there for a couple bucks for a ride. So when I moved to Petoskey, I had to get a car, and suddenly I had all those expenses, the car payment, the insurance, everything. That was a couple $100 a month. So it kind of neutralized itself. And again, this was all on a lower salary. Next slide, please. So, just in general, there are so many other benefits to public transit besides providing a safe, affordable option for lower income individuals. It can provide increased access to jobs and to medical care, can enhance opportunities for independent living for seniors and people with disabilities, can reduce traffic and parking congestion, can transport students to school or trade programs, and so on and so forth. I'll stop there and invite questions or comments. And again, just want to remind you all, this was information that was presented earlier this summer to the Board of Commissioners, who are now taking a very deep dive at the option we presented to them and doing additional research, and hope for Administrator Reeves to come back to the Board of Commissioners sometime in 2022 or late 2021, I don't know when, to figure out what is the best path moving forward for expanding access to transit in our county.
I do have a question. Thanks for that presentation. Have you done this presentation to other communities in Emmett County, and how's it been received by those?
Yes, we gave a presentation to an official presentation to the city of Petoskey. They about a month ago, they wrote a letter of support, generally supportive of our concept, and also they acknowledged the need from their perspective for public transit countywide. We've also, not formal presentations like this, but we've talked with many townships. Cross Village Township also recently submitted a letter of support.
So that's true. Many of them we did early on, just invites and not the formal full on. So we did, here's the information, briefing papers went out to all townships to make sure that people were aware, asking for questions and feedback before we did our first presentation to the county as a whole back in June. So the county was, and rightfully so, very much so, wanted to have input first and foremost and here, and then outreach from beyond that. So our formal presentations were not many, but moreover, a lot of contact also with our businesses and nonprofit organizations to see what their feedback was, because we felt that their support was very integral to a county perspective as well.
Is this gonna only be a Emmett County thing, or is it more regional?
Well, some of the options that we vetted and were asked if we clearly vetted was a collaboration with Charlevoix County. And so we did look at that, because obviously MGO was a collaboration with Sheboygan County and Straits Regional Ride. Charlevoix Transit actually wrote a letter in support of Emmett County forming their own transit authority. But I do know that many commissioners have spoken to Charlevoix County to see if that's something that can move forward as well. So hoping that that's part of their research. In fact, I know it is, that, you know, there's not just one option for transit, there's multiple and so looking deeper into that is what we know they're going to do going forward. The great thing is it's on the table. It's a conversation now, and it's a recognized, definite obstacle to our community's growth as a whole in Emmett County. And how does that fit in, and where does it fit best?
Is the authority people gonna run this, or is the county gonna run it?
The authority, and that's where authorities get fun, because some people are like, yes, and others are like, no. And that's all about, again, those articles of incorporation. If you look in your packet and kind of dig deep, or look on our website, if you're listening from the audience at thrivingpetoskey.com, you'll see that those articles determine how your authority is formed. So whoever creates the articles, and there's a great set right there already. And those were based off of other successful transit authorities. So you make sure that you have very clear placement on that authority. So you have a representative from municipalities who have investments. You have a representative from the tribe who has an investment. You have a representative from the business community. So you make sure that that authority is formed in such a way that while the county retains some control too, of course, that also other entities do as well. And you put protections in place, you know, again, with that oversight for a millage, approval for a millage. So an authority just can't put a millage on whenever they want. It has to have some backing and approval.
The majority of the authority's members would be, yes, picked or elected by the county.
Yes,
As
as we proposed.
As we've proposed.
How do you propose the other ones get picked? Is it?
Part of the outline is that all municipalities that have a vested interest are invested in that. So that would, you know, determine that, you know, Harbor Springs has a seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's, you want the municipalities to have a seat as well.
Yeah. We gave them draft articles of incorporation to consider. And in that draft, it says maybe 7 member, it's all fluid. It's just a starting point for them to think about. And it has, you know, at the township, city, village, and county level, and tribal representation, and then the remainder appointed amongst the authority board.
So everybody has a say in it, not just one entity.
Thank you. I have one question. It's one of your bullet items said significantly reduce Emmett County's legal and financial liability.
Yeah, because a transit authority is an incorporated legal entity unto itself.
Right.
And so it is not a sub-component of the county of Emmett. It's entirely separate. And so that was the point about legal or reduction in legal, because legally, it's not the same thing as Emmett County. It's its own separate thing.
But then it takes on the financial and legal liability.
Yes, it does.
But it has its own separate funding.
Yeah.
So it's not
I
coming.
get the funding part of it. And that actually, given what you've presented, is a really interesting way, because it's going to take a consortium to make this happen. But the financial, not the financial liability, but the legal liability, that then means that the transit authority is now legally responsible.
Correct. And in the articles of incorporation, it talks about the power like to sue and be sued. And for many counties that have transit authorities, that's an appealing attribute for them. They like that separation of liability.
It's appealing to the county, and it's obviously why, but it presses that liability onto the members and municipalities that are part of the transit authority.
It would. And it would also, though, you can't, you know, you talk about how much control does one have if it's a shared control. So it's one of those, again, when we were kind of vetting back and forth and looking at the different opportunities, there's positives and negatives to anything you look at. And that was one that, from our speaking with other authorities, it seemed to be the more successful end for them rather than having that general administration.
It'll just be important for those that want to sign up to participate.
Absolutely.
Understand that there's a backside of this.
Absolutely. That with a seat comes responsibility.
And risk.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for your time very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great effort and good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 3C. Rachel Roon, our Parks Director, will be just giving a brief update on Fall Festival update and some skate park fundraising activities.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm your local parks director. Thank you, sorry. All right, so that Saturday, October 2nd, I just want to let everyone know we'll be holding a fall festival. It's a Parks Recreation Department with the Marina Park Committee. It is going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be food available. There's going to be pumpkin painting, donut eating contest, caramel apple dipping, a large straw mountain. Lucas is going to love that. There's no charge. Everyone is welcome to be very family friendly. So we hope everyone joins us for that event. Tagging on to that event, on Sunday, October 10th, 2 to 5 p.m., Nate and I would like to hold a fundraising event for the skate park project for Ted Swarthout Memorial. We presented that, I don't know, about a month ago. We began fundraising about a week and a half ago, and that's going really well. We were at the farmer's market, and now we're looking to do an event before the skate park season is over and the ice rink opens. It would be 2 to 5, pretty small event. We're gonna do music, food. My question is, we were looking to have a food truck, which I know food trucks are usually Bay Street. So I'm looking for permission to look at that option up at the skate park for this event for just that few hours. So.
I think it's fine.
I think it's great. It'll help the fundraising effort.
Awesome, all right.
Great choice.
Thanks, friends. So we are gonna do that fundraising event. We welcome everyone to it. We also welcome people to call me, call Nate, if you have questions about the project. Everyone listening at home, we don't have the money. So yeah, we are looking for that. Any questions on the Fall Fest or the skate park event?
Email me the information on the skate park.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Maybe I'll help out.
yeah, let's do it. Nate, do you have anything you want to say?
I sure do.
Go for it.
There's perception in town that it's paid for, it's not paid for. We haven't got the funds that I think a lot of people think that we have. So I just want to say that we need a lot of support. Everybody who's been there and has heard the pitch is on board, but we need support to make it a reality.
Yeah. Everyone tell your friends. Okay. Thank you.
How much do we need, Nate? We have so many.
A tremendous amount of money.
Like how many zeros? Let's start with that.
6 figures.
Yeah.
Right, moving on to item 3D. So the energy efficiency and energy conservation program. So the state mandated, I believe back in 2007 or 2008, I won't read out this whole memo, you've read it, I just summarize it here, but municipal utility owners and operators, which we are one, of course, implement a program to promote and create programs and services to enhance or energy efficiency, to reduce energy waste. And so the city back in 2008 had a couple options. Of course, we couldn't do it in-house at that time. So there's a lot of, being a state program, there's a lot of reporting, a lot of administration, a lot of technicalities to it and nuances. So we contracted with the state program, I guess, Energy Efficiency United was the state's key player in this. So we contracted with them to be our contracted party that would administer this program. So for the last 13 years, they have been administrating that program, or so, about 13 years, I would say. And essentially they're providing services like they were providing, like free energy efficient light bulbs, and then, retrofitting businesses perhaps, and giving education awareness materials about how to conserve energy at the home, trying out different programs and services. So they've done a few things. The way we pay for this is twofold. One is by a set fee on the commercial payers utility bill, so about $35 a year. A commercial entity that pays your electric utility will pay $35 a year, while there's a resident will pay about 1.25% of their monthly bill. It goes toward this program, this energy optimization program. You probably see it on your charge as EOPR or EOPC, if you look at your utility bill. This program is expiring, the state mandate is expiring in 2021, December 31st, 2021. Part of the reason it didn't get renewed was because our MMEA and others basically lobbied the state saying that we could do a better job of this more efficiently on a local level than having a state mandate to do this. So the state said, okay, we won't, this is sunsetting, we'll let you guys take care of this. And so now it's up to us to take care of it. We've been spending about $75,000 per year, of course, paid for by the customers for this energy optimization program. Really though, we have a few options now. The first option is we could decide to do nothing and not do any kind of energy waste reduction program. The risk with that is we did tell the state with other municipalities that, we can do a better job. And then if they see that all these municipalities aren't doing anything about it, they may just reinstate another mandate. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there's something that may happen. So that's one option. The other option is either continue contracting with Efficiency United or contract with another entity. And MPPA has been working with Franklin Energy, which is located downstate, with some of other municipal utilities for the past 10, 12 years, and using them as their provider. I found that Efficiency United has been okay to work with, but one of the problems has been is they're not located here, so they're not here often. They're here once in a while. We don't have that physical presence. And I think a lot of their programs, some of them have been successful, but others haven't. And I think a lot of staff and other people here can say, they really haven't utilized Efficiency United a whole lot. And there's probably it's not just Efficiency United, it's about, the city having time to help market with that information, but there's a lot of factors there. So another option I would recommend if you're going to contract with someone is to utilize MPPA because they are, we are part of the MPPA, they're an authority. And I think it might be more smoother I'm always in constant communication with them. We have weekly meetings with MPPA. So I think contracting with them would be a better option. However, Franklin Energy is located downstate. So I'm still kind of nervous about, are they going to have that same physical presence, our customers and residents going to have that same access to these programs and services as with Efficiency United? Is it going to be worse or is it going to be better? Maybe that's something we can work out with a contract with the MPPA. Third option would be to do something in-house. And this would not be spending new city money to create a position, but it would be using that $75,000 to either have a part-time or a full-time staff member and to deliver these programs. It could do free energy audits of homes, provide programs and services, and whatnot that Efficiency United has been providing. If we do option 2 or 3, we have to decide on a budget and we can just pick our own budget. We can stick with that 75,000, that same rate, or we can go less or we can go higher. The benefit here, if we did it in-house, there's no reporting to the state we have to do, so all that administrative burden is gone. However, on the other hand, will we have enough work for a person in-house to do this kind of program? So the benefit, my recommendation would either be contracted out and see if we can find some kind of contract. If we'd like the contractor agreement with MPPA and Franklin Energy, and if we aren't comfortable with the arrangement, then we look at another option. I feel like doing nothing would not be consistent with part of our clean energy goals, as well as with what we relayed to the state about how we, it's better that we can handle this in-house instead of being mandated to do this. So those are my options. If we're going to go with option 2 or 3, I think what we need to do is set a budget, and either we can say we're comfortable with the current scheme of getting money from customers, or we want to look at a different way of getting the money. But MPPA needs to know as soon as possible. They're trying to get as many municipalities together so they have kind of a group, more so group buy-in, group arrangement to know what they need to contract with Franklin Energy for. So any questions or thoughts initially about that?
I think we should continue to do something.
I agree.
I don't know about doing it in-house. It sounds like a lot of work.
Well, who would we hire that would have the expertise, experience, resources, and connections? I think as we do with MPPA in general for power acquisition, we'd be better off leveraging what they're doing across many municipalities.
So, you know, we could sell light bulbs at a discounted price, but I mean, that's not, we need to do more than that.
The return on that particular investment might not pay for the,
Right.
for the position. I mean, I've been impressed over the years with what MPPA has done. I went to several other meetings. I mean, they're doing well for the city and the power acquisition. That it's in their vested interest to see efficiency improve. So leveraging that, if you can address your concern about them also being remote, to me, that would be the way to go. We already have, we have an existing relationship that we can further leverage.
So I guess it seems pretty
That would be
consensus
mine.
with that. So then, second question is the budget. Do we want to stick with the same amount of money or do we want to, it's up to council.
Wouldn't that come out of a discussion with them about how much?
No, we go to them, whatever we want. We can say that we want to spend 75, 25, 50, $100,000. What can we get? That's really what.
Your thoughts?
Well, we have a source of funding. I'm not sure that would change.
No, exactly. But do we still want to stick with the 1.25% for residential and $35 essentially a year for commercial customers?
Again, I think that would come out of a conversation on that. We want to spend 75, but what can we get for 75? Can we get what we were getting before for 50? If we invest 25 more and go to 100, do we just knock the socks off as far as the programs we can have?
Right, then I rephrase the question. What do you want me to say to them? What can we get for what number? For the current number?
If that's the approach, I'd say for the current number, until we know more. Let's spend more.
Yeah, see what Franklin has to offer at
Right.
$75,000 price point. Energy United was all right. They never really follow through.
I was never very clear on exactly what we got.
Yeah. Just got it light bulbs, free light bulbs.
Like I said,
So they say.
those might have turned out to be really expensive light bulbs.
They helped me in my, in 2 commercial buildings
Yeah.
to upgrade the lighting, the electricity. It was significant on the new project.
Yeah, they were better on the commercial end.
Yeah, when I've talked with Efficiency United about some of the issues, and part of it being a resort community was, 2/3 of the homes, trying to get them to, care or partake in some of this just wasn't on top of their radar. They weren't worried about the money savings that they could get. So kind of reaching,
Right.
certain clientele about it was, I talked in-house with staff about it, and we think, even spending less money, but doing a better job of outreach and education on how to, do efficiency retrofits and stuff like that, rather than just giving out, reduced costs. But I can ask them for what we're doing right now, what they can deliver. My one thing I really want to address is, will they have a better physical presence in Harbor Springs, and how will they reach our customers? And because MPPA is going to have to, obviously, on their own, hire more people depending on how many municipalities, through Franklin Energy, of course, is what they're doing this time, so.
Sounds like a good plan.
Great. All right, I think, do you want to go into closed session or first run through city manager's report?
I said, let's do city managers, and we should probably do the new and old.
Oh, new and old city business, okay.
Talk about the bills.
All right, so something that did not make the update was DPW wanted to remind everyone that we are, fall brush and leaf pickup starts October 4th. It'll last through mid-late November. So it's just a reminder that that information is on the website, it's on social media. So the Bull Moose Well Water Main Replacement Project, this one kind of came fast on us when we got information from the, I think it's Tri-County. They said they'd be here within late summer, early fall. We didn't really hear back until a week before the project was slated to start. So we kind of rushed together to get a detour route and letters out to neighbors on the Sunday before the project is supposed to start. So it was a little rushed, but the boring is almost finished. They've had some issues hitting some rock and some things down there. So we're hoping that they can get the boring done tomorrow and then have 3 days of testing and be done by Friday. That was our upper than we thought. We thought they would be done with boring last week, but they just didn't finish it. So still waiting on that. There is a detour route and I have received calls from a few residents. The detour route goes up and to Summit, down Peffer. There's questions about why we couldn't direct it from and all the way to Lake and then take Lake all the way out into the township. And we just can't do that. We can't divert traffic from in the city and from M119 to go on a state road to go onto township road without some kind of compensation or some kind of agreement or arrangement there. And we don't allow townships to do that for the projects or the county to divert to our roads. So it's so that explanation usually helps people understand it better, but still not happy about traffic going on Summit Street. But anyway, this happens. Hopefully we'll be done. Pickleball court resurfacing project is finished, has finally finished. They were supposed to come in June originally, but they made it here and yeah, it looks good. So
Time for the fall pickleball tournament.
the pickleball, and hopefully that encourages people to also look to the other half of the park there, the skate park, and they see a nice brand new facility for pickleball courts. Hopefully they can turn their heads and say, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this looks good too? But anyway, that's finished. So we're glad. I'm going to be in contact with Robinsons to see when our landscaping of City Hall area will start. They said fall, again, broad range of when they start. So I want to try to narrow it down before it comes to surprises us. Oh yeah, the MMEA is working on state legislation so that MPPA and MMEA meetings can be held virtually. As you know, we have monthly meetings that I have to go downstate to Lansing for, spend the night there. So it's just kind of takes some time and costs some money. Be nice if we can meet virtually since these entities have members from all over the state, from Marquette all the way down to Lansing. So hopefully they'll allow exceptions for these statewide authorities to meet virtually, at least sometimes, because it just make it easier on me and all the other members to participate. Some slowdown in website data, September drastically. So just noticed that trend. We've been pretty consistent all year long. I don't know what it is, why people aren't visiting us in September, but who knows. Facebook and social media has been engagement has increased significantly. I think I've had Rachel doing some more parks posts. So now we have more people posting on social media. So that's getting more engagement from users. So it's always a good thing to have people access information from more than one source. We had several board meetings. The Planning Commission met twice. The Tree Advisory Board met twice. DDA met. Park Committee met twice. Planning Commission, they did a recap on their short-term rental, their public input session with there's 65, 70 people at least attendance between in person and on Zoom. We're making progress on our master plan goals. I think we've run through the goals and now we're going to start focusing a little bit more on the land use section. Marina Park Committee, as you heard from Rachel, is going to be doing a fall fest. We would have came to council with that, but we didn't have a meeting since we thought the idea up in mid-August. So, and Tree Advisory Board is also discussing ways to do more outreach, as well as trying to put together a tree care and maintenance program and budget to see how much it really does cost to maintain our trees and what we really need to do to maintain our existing trees, let alone new trees that we add. I know Nancy and privy to those discussions as a tree board. And then the DDA met on September 2nd, and they also focused their discussions on the downtown tree gardens and what they'll be recommending to council with regards to Merchants Walkway. So that's what I have for that. Meetings, like every month, is usually a bunch of MPPA meetings. So any questions about other city business? Thank you. I guess before closed session, new and old business.
I'll just give a quick update. The city sidewalk projects should be about 99% done next week.
Yeah, so you guys working.
So the only thing won't be done will be the park down here. Got a stretch down by the beach. We're gonna wait and do that last after festivities are kind of wrapped up. So.
We said we were going to revisit the bells.
Yeah.
Right.
So my question of that was, do we want to Now, throw out a council, do you want me to do more research on that? The church bells are exempt. I don't know exactly when and how it came to be, but they are exempt. And so I guess it leaves the council, you want me to look at that ordinance, or do you want to leave it
Are
as is?
they exempt at the city level or state level or?
They are exempt at the city level. They're not, I don't know if they're exempt at the state level. Like that they would be. State doesn't usually interfere in that.
This question, every hour thing.
Yeah, the every hour and the 32 bells before the 6 bells at 6 a.m. is, I'm not a big fan of that. Because it doesn't matter where you are in town, you can hear them behind the bluff. And they're plenty loud, they wake me up every day, so.
I have an idea. If council would like, planning commission could maybe do the next level of investigation on this, with the ability to get a little bit more detail and talk to folks in the community if you'd like a little time to reflect on it.
I don't know if that's, thanks, Bill, thanks for the offer. I just don't know if that's because it's a city code. It's a nuisance, in the city code. An exemption would be made from city council.
I talked to my brother who lives down there and he has for 30 years. And he said that not everybody down there shares the opinion that I explained the petitions were claiming. So I think we need to do more research before we do anything. We need to see, you know, is it just the 20 people on the petition that feel this way about the bells and the music? He did say that the music and the bells were increased when COVID hit. And it was, you know, part of the effort of the churches to help soothe the community. And maybe they don't need that now. So if that's correct, then we should, you know, talk with the churches and see is that still necessary?
Turn the volume down a little bit on the
Yeah.
new
Yeah,
audio
I
system.
talked with Chief Knight, and we see this as two separate issues. You know, there is one of the church bells are exempt from the decibel level, so they can play the church bells as loud as they want, whenever they want. So that's as our interpretation of the city code. That's how we view that. The second half is the music. The music is, in our opinion, based on reading the code, it has to be within a decibel level limit. And I think when Chief went out there was slightly above.
A lot of it varies on which way the wind is. If you can set the times that, and I went down there with my body camera and took the readings with my body camera, and the wind's predominantly been out of the west, and I stand right in front of the church. So I'm in a perfect storm. If the wind's like my Denise said the other day she heard the fire whistle the first time since she's been up here. You know, it's because wind was directly out of the south. So a lot of it's based on which way the wind's going. I think that, and I talked to Mr. Sheldon, Tom at length, and I've talked to Father at length as well, that there can be some type of compromise. I don't know. Victor and I don't know how to put him, but we could possibly facilitate this. I don't think Father's, I think the 6 noon and 6 bells, he would like to see there this, and I wish he had stayed to be a part of this conversation. I think that he would like them to stay. As far as the music on the hour, you know, that's what I call them hymns or songs. You know, I think that's something that we could work on. I think that those fall within the guidelines of the other ones where it's like 8:30 to 7, and on Sundays I think if you felt
Sundays, there's always been extra.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
And then you got the Methodist church, they bring their bells also.
right.
So they did, Father did, like, apparently the church right around the corner, they had an issue years, not that long ago, and that they had their mat or their servant or service at like 11 o'clock. So he compromised and he turned it down, because I believe I haven't been up there, that there are adjustments to the decibel level. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Sullivan, go ahead.
Oh, if I have a chance to speak. The church bells at 90 dB are 4 times louder than what city ordinance is at 70 dB. I mean, I don't understand the math of it. That's logarithmic. So it's perceived as 4 times louder than 70 dB, which is what I'm allowed to play my music at. Also, when Chief Knight took the survey, he said, Tom, I was really surprised it's 40 dB when it's perfect, perfectly still of the night, 5:45. And that's typical for a rural, as quiet as it's gonna get. But if you can imagine, if from 70 to 90 is 4 times as loud, can you imagine when we're at 40 dB, peace and quiet, and then it goes to 90? It's just a huge swing. The other thing that was kind of interesting is I thought, I better go to church this morning for the 6 o'clock Angelus, so I understand what the devotional is. I was the only one in the church at 6 o'clock this morning. Mass is at 8. So calling to prayer for the devotional at 6 doesn't make sense if your actual service is at 8. And my whole point is we live in a resort community. A lot of people come here to recharge and rejuvenate. And to get a 6 o'clock bell at 91 dB every single day of every week of every month is pretty tough.
I agree with what Victor said. There are multiple issues here. There's at least 2. One is just the raw level. And I think that, I too am a little disappointed in Father didn't say, full disclosure, I'm a member of Holy Childhood. So I know Father and I've worked with him. And I was a little disappointed there wasn't more conversation. So rather than doing more research or involving planning commission or doing anything else, I think there's a negotiation to be had before we do anything else like that. And I would be glad to participate, or if you feel that as a council member, I shouldn't do that, certainly Victor and Kyle can do that. But I wouldn't invest any more into it until we have a neighborhood conversation in the church to see what might come out of it.
Yeah, so that'd be the first place to start.
I mean, Father and Fred, they're very reasonable people.
I think it's a great idea.
There was more aggrievement than I would have expected. The write-up and the comments were not meant to be personal attacks. So let's take it down a notch and let's go
Right, and
try to work it out.
Kyle, would you be interested in working with John?
Yeah, 'cause I've talked to Mr. Sheldon, I've talked to Father, and in my reports, basically, I'm just reporting facts. And I went down there and that's why I took my body camera, because this is what I did, I'm unbiased both ways. It's like, I
So
understand it.
let's take those facts that you collected and let's try to figure out what a compromise might be.
Chief Knight and I can sit down, we'll reach out to both parties and see if they want to sit down. We'll set up a meeting sometime, and from there, if nothing happens or we don't make progress, then I'll come back to council with direction on whether or not you want to relook at an ordinance or something, so.
Well, I wouldn't have a problem if John sat in with you guys,
That's up to the council.
member of us.
No, that's fine.
I'm not a practicing member like I used to be, so.
Well, then you'd be able to negotiate a return
Right. You don't know if you want me to walk in there anymore.
That one might be off the table.
and spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, maybe.
So I would recommend approaching that before we take any more severe action.
I'd agree.
I think it's great. I love a compromise. My concerns, I'll just state, is that their submission with how many times it rang the bell was kind of out of touch with reality. And the bells did stop on the hour on September 4th,
Right.
but they started again today. I mean, at 3 o'clock, there was one. So it was kind of like, we're grateful. I'm grateful for the reprieve, but I don't know with holidays coming up, what the future and if switches can be.
Well, I think we'll talk about that. We'll see if we can talk about with the church.
It was ironic, I was in Petoskey the other day at court and they rang over there and you could hear them inside of the courthouse.
Yeah. It's not a unique issue.
No.
All right.
We'll make it happen.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think, any other old and new business? Anyone have anything?
No, that's what we're going to close session.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Next, we have a closed session to talk about, I think, 2 separate things. One is about what Mr. Demmer is trying to do earlier, our legal memorandum on that property question, as well as If you give us that.
I would propose that a council person make a motion to meet in closed session under section 8 E of the open meeting, under section AH of the Open Meetings Act, specifically to consult with the city attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with the pending litigation in the two Williams cases, the Frudenberger case and the Potter case. And in addition to meeting closed session to consider the written opinion of the city attorney on the Demmer matter, which you received information about tonight, and to consider in closed session under section 8D, the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease of that real property is obtained. So that's a very lengthy motion, but that would get us into closed session.
I'll second.
Mr.
What he said.
Mr. Raymond, is there any reason for us to stick around, or we'll communicate after? Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Nancy Randall.
Yes.
Al Dika.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Amanda Guerra. Yes. Zach Combs. We're now in closed session.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.
See you guys. Take care. If you need anything, holler, let Victor know. Breakfast at church and stuff.
Ring the bells louder.
What's that?
Ring the bells louder.